Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. So today we're talking about the book locations of the book The Perfume by Patrick Suesskind. And for those who don't know the book exactly, it's about a serial killer. So we're following the footsteps of Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. He was born in Paris. He was actually born here. And he had a specialty. He had a very good nose, so he could smell anything. But on the other hand, he didn't have an inner smell, so he smelled like nothing. People couldn't smell him, and that made the other people uncomfortable. So in the book, he goes through a few steps. So at first, he's with a vet nurse, and then he gets to work at a tanner, and then he enters the world of artificial scents, and he works for a perfume maker. And in secret, he's the one making all the good perfumes. And then, because he doesn't have an inner smell, people don't really like him, don't trust him. So he is starting to make his own perfume that makes him smell human. And he suddenly realizes that, if he mixes some really nasty ingredients, suddenly people will accept him as being human. And then he wants to create a perfume that is better than human. So he wants to kill all the best smelling women and make perfume out of their body odor, and then use it on himself, and then he will be loved. And if that wasn't enough, the book ends by him being eaten because he creates that perfume, and they love him so much that they just kill him and eat him. So the first time I read this book was actually at school, by the way. So we're now standing on the other side, and this used to be the Rue Aux Fers, and this is where Grenouille was born. His mother was working at a fish stand when she felt that the baby was coming, and she didn't expect the baby to survive, so she threw him out with the fish garbage. But then the baby started to cry, and then people thought that she was trying to kill the baby, which she probably was. And so they had her executed on the Place de Grève. This used to be the Rue Aux Fers, and then if you're going around the corner here, this is the Rue St Denis. So Grenouille was given into the hands of the church, and the church organized a wet nurse for him. She was called Jeanne Bussy. Jeanne Bussy lived in the Rue St Denis. But soon after that, she returned the baby to the church, claiming he didn't smell like anything, and also he was taking too much food, and so there was none left for the other babies, and she couldn't survive on just nursing one baby. So, next location for the perfume, we are right now standing in the Rue St Martin, in front of the church Cemetary. So in the scene that is happening here is that the wet nurse, Jeanne Bussy, is returning the baby Grenouille back to the church. She's giving two reasons for that. One, he doesn't have an inner smell. And then second, he is drinking too much, so she can't have another baby. And, well, that her business is to have several babies to nurse. And so she's returning him. And Father Terrier, who's standing in front of the church, and he just really wants her to go away. And he can't understand why she's complaining, but in the end, he understands. He has to take the baby. So he's looking at the baby and starts thinking, what if I hadn't become a monk? What if I was a father and this could be my son? But then the baby wakes up and starts to smell him, and you see the little nostrils move, and suddenly the monk is very disgusted by that. So then the monk is disgusted with the baby, and so he tries to find a place as far out as possible. And he finds someone in the Rue de Seine, which is behind the Bastille, far out. So the name of the place is actually Church Semetary and not Abbey of Semetary. So I don't know if it used to be an abbey or if this is one of the liberties that the author took with the book. Because, as you might have noticed, the book is not always very realistic. We are currently standing in front of the Hôtel Dieu, one of the oldest hospitals in Paris. And here is where the late husband of Madame Gaillard had to go to die. And for her, this was such a horrible death that all her life is dedicated to make enough money so she could get a private death. Unfortunately, she lived long enough to have the French Revolution start, and then all her savings were exchanged for paper money, and that lost value pretty quickly. And so finally, she was brought into the Hotel Dieu, and she also had her public death. Madame Gaillard is the person who is taking in orphan children. She acts as a wet nurse until they're 2 years old, and after that, she's just taking care of them. And the church is still paying for Grenouille until he's 8 years old. But then she thinks he's kind of a weird child, and so she isn't unhappy when the money stops coming in from the church. And so when he's 8 years old, he's giving him over to Monsieur Grimal, who is a tanner. So I'm standing in the Rue de l'Hôtel de Ville, which used to be called Rue de la Mortellerie. When he's 8 years old, Grenouille gets sold into the hands of a tanner who lived at the Rue de la Mortellerie, and he had to do the nastiest part of the tanner business, the one where you use little children, and if they die, not many people will ask where they went, so they would often use orphans. But then he gets sick, and it isn't clear if he will survive, but he does, and now he's immune to getting this illness again, and that means that he's becoming more and more valuable for Grimal, the tanner. Grenouille is getting more liberties at work. He is now allowed to explore Paris after work. One of the areas mentioned is the area of Saint-Eustache. And it's mentioned how the streets are very narrow and how there are many people living there and the smells are almost overwhelming. We now have a very free area in the park and large streets, but it wasn't like that in the 16th century. We are now standing in front of the Hotel de Ville in Paris, and this place used to be called Place de Grève. Maybe you have already read some other historical novels, so Place de Grève will ring a bell, because this was the place where people were executed. In the book it says that Grenouille's mother was executed by chopping her head off. But I assume this is an inaccuracy, because the guillotine had not been invented yet, and beheading was the type of execution that was only used if you were noble. Other people would have been hanged or much worse. So I don't think that Grenouille's mother would get away with quickly having her head chopped off. Her death must have been much longer and more painful. And you can see Notre Dame over there. And actually, Grenouille is often at this place, and if you're going closer to the Seine, there used to be boats, and he used to stand at the Seine. We are currently standing in the Rue de Seine. One day there is a firework to celebrate the King of France, and Grenouille is standing on the Pont Royal, and suddenly he catches a faint smell that he really likes. So he actually crosses the river and soon gets into the Rue de Seine, which is where we are standing right now. And then he goes to one of the little streets that go off Rue de Seine, and apparently it's called Rue de Marais. Now, there's a real Rue de Marais, which is of course in the Marais, but it's a very large street. So the street that the book describes of very small, almost dark, and like a dark corner where someone is sitting, isn't at all how the real Rue de Marais looked like. But it's called Rue de Marais in the book. And he gets there, and then he sees that there is a woman cutting plums. And he realizes that the awesome smell comes from that woman. So he decides to kill her, and that is the very first person that he's killing. And he kills her, and then he undresses her to get all the smell of her. By that point, he hasn't been educated in how to conserve smells, and then all he can do is hide in the darkness, because then they find the dead body, and he quickly leaves the scene of the crime, and he never gets caught. We're standing in front of Pont Au Change, and back in the 16th century, this bridge looked very different because you had houses to both sides, and you could even don't see the river according to the book, so you would imagine that you would be walking on a very elegant street. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my wonderful camera woman, Majenka, who is behind the camera. I link her Instagram down below.
I hope you liked the video, and if you did, then please give it a thumbs up and comment down below, and if you haven't, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye!